China is absolutely jam-packed with efficient, affordable, practical, compact electric SUVs, like this, the BYD Yuan Plus. However, while vehicles like the Yuan Plus are perfectly good at meeting your basic needs, they're not what you would call interesting. Enter the Fangchengbao Tai 3, a compact electric SUV that trades a little bit of efficiency for a whole lot of attitude.
Welcome to Wheels Boy, where we cover the newest, coolest, and wildest vehicles from the Chinese car market. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.
The next stop on Wheels Boy's EV tour is our most beautiful driving route yet, because we are going to China's Sichuan province, including the amazing cities of Chengdu and Chongqing. Yes, there will be pandas, and for those of you with a real sense of adventure, we're offering you the opportunity to extend your journey all the way to Lhasa in Tibet. This event begins in mid-August, so reach out ASAP to tour@wheelsboy.cn to learn more.
Fangchengbao, sometimes called Formula Leopard, is a premium off-road brand from BYD, and the Tai 3 is their entry-level model. Here in China, entry-level still means entry-level, so the Tai 3 has a starting price of less than $17,000 and tops out at $27,000. If and when this car goes abroad, it will almost certainly be sold as a Denza rather than a Fangchengbao.
I must admit that I find few things more charming than a small car that's trying to act and look like a bigger car. And the Tai 3, with its relatively small size, big square shape, fender flares, and puggish Whittle front end, definitely qualifies. The result is something that looks more like an oversized toy than a regular car, and I'm not really sure whether to drive it or grab it by the top and push it around the sandbox. The Tai 3's attempt at toughness includes a whole bunch of black plastic body cladding and vents, some of which are real, some of which are not. I'm of course referring to the vents. All of the plastic is real plastic. I'm sure some of you are a bit peeved at me for continuing to refer to this thing as small, but give me a break. I'm American. Even our smallest pickup trucks are larger than the average European home. To be fair to you, the Tai 3 does present as very large, but that's mostly a result of the styling. In reality, at 4.6 meters in length, 1.9 meters in width, and 1.72 meters in height, it's almost the same as a BYD Yuan Plus, or just slightly larger in every dimension. Despite their similar dimensions and the fact that they're both pure EVs, this thing and the Yuan Plus don't actually ride on the same platform. The Yuan Plus rides on the older E-Platform 3.0, whereas this rides on E-Platform 3.0 Evo. This is evidenced, one, by the faster charge times on this car. They claim it can go from 30 to 80% in 18 minutes. And improved packaging. Whereas the Yuan Plus has no frunk, this has a substantial 151-liter frunk. This car's name, Tai, is actually the Chinese character for titanium, which, if you look very closely at the badge, they've very helpfully written out for you in a very tiny font. This car's official length is 4.6 meters, but that almost certainly includes a little bit of this lump here on the rear end. This is not a spare tire mount, which you probably already guessed because it's definitely not big enough to be that. This is actually the automotive equivalent of a backpack. If I press this rubberized button on the side, boom, this pops open to reveal a storage compartment, which I suppose you can put some things in there, things you don't mind moving around while you drive.
Fangchengbao has declined to release an official number when it comes to boot space in the Tai 3, perhaps because it looks to be on the smaller side. It does, however, have a camping-friendly 220-volt outlet.
That still leaves one cargo area we need to talk about. You probably noticed the roof-mounted cargo box. Well, this is not a roof-mounted cargo box. This is actually the drone base for the Tai 3. This isn't the first Chinese 4x4 we've seen with a drone base. The Yangwang U8 and M Hero 917 both had an available drone base, but those cars cost 4 to 5 times more than this one, and their drone base was an extra 14,000 USD. This drone base is only available on the top trim level of this car, which is appropriately called the Drone Edition. It is an extra 4,200 USD more than the trim level below it. Now you might be thinking, well, that's a steal, right? 10K less than the drone option on, say, the Yangwang U8. Except the Yangwang U8 costs $140,000, so the drone option represents about a 10% increase in asking price. Meanwhile, this represents a nearly 20% increase in asking price over the trim level below it. In other words, I don't think they're going to sell very many of these. Oh, we're not going to be flying the drone, by the way. This is a pre-production car, so Fangchengbao has asked us not to use it. And even if they told us to use it, we can't use it because it's pretty much illegal to fly a drone anywhere near Shanghai. So, next time. One downside of the drone base is that it blocks a majority of this car's glass roof, which means you can only open the sun visor to right about there. That means the interior isn't quite as airy as I would hope. The base version of this car has a 12.8-inch central screen, but every other trim level above that uses this 15.6-inch display, which, by the way, has an English language menu. Higher trim levels also can get this heated and cooled central storage area. Currently got some drinks in there at 2 degrees Celsius, and I'm definitely going to be enjoying those after I'm done talking to you right now. Finally, this being a Fangchengbao, it has a Devialet audio system. Base car, 8 speakers. Upper trim levels, 14, but this drone version has 16 because it adds 2 headrest mounted speakers right here. Finally, the drone version gets a heads-up display.
All but the lowest spec of the Tai 3 comes standard with heated and ventilated front row seats, but rest assured that no cows were harmed in the making of this vehicle, because all seats are trimmed in faux leather.
Like other Fangchengbao models, such as the larger Bao 5 and Bao 8, the interior styling of the Tai 3 can best be described as futuristic outdoorsy. That includes the Fangchengbao signature row of crystalline rocker switches aft of your transmission lever. I've never really understood putting crystal rocker switches into something that's supposed to be an off-road vehicle. Feels a little bit like putting a crystal chandelier into a tent. In terms of material quality, however, this is not up to the same level as a Bao 5 or Bao 8. It's a perfectly acceptable, indeed quite nice interior for a $17,000 to $27,000 US car, but I wouldn't go so far as to call it premium. There is plenty of soft touch material in certain places, but there's also a lot more hard plastic. There are some things I really like about the steering wheel on the Tai 3. For example, the clearly labeled physical buttons for all of the functions. You've also got 2 great roller wheels. On the left side, this one's used to change between your on-road driving modes, so your normal, sport, eco. On the right side, this one allows you to change into your different off-road modes, so snow, sand, mud, mountain. This is way easier than having to dig through the center menu, so I really like having these here. But there are some things I don't like so much. For example, the paddle over here on the left side of the steering wheel is used to turn your driver assistance on and off. And on other Denza and Fangchengbao cars, there's a matching paddle on the right side. Here, there's only this one on the left. It looks kind of lopsided. They should have taken this vestigial paddle and gotten rid of it, and taken that function and put it back into the steering wheel here, just like everybody else does. Finally, and honestly most annoying for me, is something that I've noticed on so many BYD cars. This scrolly wheel here that is used to control your volume as well as confirm things in the menu. In other cars, it is the pause play button. On a BYD, it's the mute button. As a frequent listener to podcasts, this drives me crazy because when I want to pause my podcast, I have to reach over and do it on the screen, which takes my eyes away from the road. If this was a pause play button, I wouldn't have to worry about that. But because I'm listening to a podcast, I don't want to miss anything or I'll lose all the context, so I have to pause it. I can't use this and just mute it. This is a small thing that probably wouldn't bother that many people, but it is something that drives me crazy. Okay, rant over. But then the Tai 3 starts to win me back over with a couple of functions that I absolutely love. For starters, on the driver's side of the center console, you have a detachable flashlight/lamp. This is a vehicle that's sold as being something you would take off-roading or camping, so this is a genuinely useful function. Less useful than this, but definitely very BYD brandy, is this, a detachable microphone for doing in-car karaoke. They would go something like this. I could really use another flashlight here in the second row if I'm being honest, because that closed roof means it's kind of dark, even with this very light colored interior. At least you have decent headroom and decent legroom. You've also got a fold down center armrest with cup holders and 2 USB charging ports, a Type-C and a Type-A. Lower trim levels of the Tai 3 are available with a single rear electric motor, making a very reasonable 160 kilowatts and 310 newton-meters of torque. That's enough for a 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time in, again, a very reasonable 7.9 seconds. But for a little bit more money, you could go for the dual motor model like this, which has 310 kilowatts and 510 newton-meters of torque. It will hit 0 to 100 in just 4.9 seconds. That level of acceleration isn't groundbreaking in the world of EVs, but it feels hilariously out of place behind the wheel of an SUV that looks like an oversized child's toy. Stabbing the throttle in a Tai 3 feels like you've strapped a bottle rocket to the top of a Tonka truck. It's a recipe for a good time.
The official CLTC range of the Tai 3 is 501 kilometers, and that's regardless of which powertrain you choose. They accomplished this feat by offering a slightly larger LFP blade battery for the dual motor than for the single motor, 73 kilowatt hours versus 65. Offering a larger battery on your dual motor model is very commonplace, but offering one that's just large enough to make sure that the range is exactly the same is something I've never seen.
And it gets weirder, because if you opt for the drone edition like this, then it's equipped with a third LFP blade battery measuring 78.8 kilowatt hours. That is clearly intended to offset the added energy drain of that drone base on the roof and still deliver, you guessed it, 501 kilometers of range. Battery weirdness aside, the Tai 3 has some of the best driving dynamics of any compact electric SUV in this price point. The ride is surprisingly comfortable and the handling is surprisingly composed, considering the fact that it has a higher ride height than many electric SUVs in this same segment. Now, some credit for that has to go to the adjustable dampers that are only available on higher trim cars like this, but I also think part of the secret sauce is the tuning of the dual ball joint McPherson strut front suspension and the 5-link in the rear. That suspension keeps a lot of harshness from making its way into the cabin, as does dual pane front glass. I was impressed by the level of wind noise that this car had, or the lack of wind noise at highway speeds. Even though it has a big drone base on the roof, it's surprisingly refined.
We did some light off-roading in the Tai 3, and its dual-motor powertrain was very sure-footed, even on street tires. The approach angle of 25 degrees, departure angle of 28 degrees, and maximum ground clearance of 23 centimeters are all a step above your average compact SUV.
The Tai 3 comes standard with BYD's DiPilot 100 driver assistance system with highway NOA. I used that highway NOA system in a variety of environments, including highways and expressways here in Shanghai, in heavy traffic and in light traffic, in daytime and in nighttime, and I honestly found it to be impressively capable, especially considering it's a system that comes as standard on a car that starts at just $17,000 USD. The Tai 3 might not be as luxurious as previous Fangchengbao models, but it's definitely a cut above the competition when it comes to driving experience, both on-road and off-road. More importantly, perhaps, to a great many buyers, it's also a cut above the competition when it comes to outdoorsy attitude. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, like, subscribe, and hit the bell.